Hello, I'm John Shavacco, the co-chair of the NY-GEO 2023 conference and a board member of the New York Geothermal Energy Organization. I'd like to welcome you to this recording of a live presentation from the conference, a two-day event which was held in Albany, New York on April 26th and 27th of 2023. This year's educational sessions and keynotes represent the latest in ground source heat pump system design, product innovations, and installation practices, along with important policy, regulatory, financing, and incentive updates. This presentation is one of over 40 sessions from the two-day event, all of which were recorded and available at NY-GEO's website, www.ny-geo.org, along with session descriptions and a link to download the slides from each of the sessions presented. NY-GEO is proud to make this content available to our members and other industry stakeholders, and if you are a member, thanks so much for your support and participation. If you find this content valuable and for some odd reason you are not yet a member, consider joining NY-GEO at the appropriate membership level with details available at our website. The live recording from the NY-GEO 2023 conference will start in just a moment. Thanks so much for listening.
I guess we'll get it going. We have our next panel, and if anything happens like the last one, people will start filling in. This one does butt up to lunch sometime around noon. Very important topic, as we saw in the last session. People wanted to spill over and talk about training, kind of trying to steal some of the thunder from this very busy panel up here. We have Kortney Lull with Midwest Geothermal. Also has another very nice title that she'll talk about a little bit as well. Very, very hot button topic in New York State. How do we evolve drilling to meet demand? It's training. We've talked a little bit about technology, and I am going to turn it over to Kortney and let her have some fun.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. This is a fabulous conference. This turnout is absolutely outstanding, and I couldn't be more grateful for everyone in this room. So as Kevin mentioned, we're going to talk about how do we evolve geothermal drilling, the market, our capacity, to meet the demand that is coming. So as he mentioned, I'm Kortney Lull. I'm Vice President at Midwest Geothermal. I am also very lucky to chair the IGSPA, International Ground Source Heat Pump Association. I'm the chair for the board of directors. So to get started today, I'm going to have all of our panelists here introduce themselves. So let's start on the very end with Gino, and make sure you turn the microphone on.
My name is Gino Rezze. I'm with Ground Heat in Canada. Over the years, I've been an ambassador on the geothermal side of things. Project in South Korea, China, Eastern Europe, but most of the work has been in Canada and the U.S. And been doing some drilling and from soup to nuts in some cases. And I've had machines anywhere from the Mayhews 1000 to the Schramm DA60s to the Kamachios and whatnot. So I'm very, thank you very much for bringing me on this panel. It's a very interesting topic.
Hi, I'm Jim Utter from Utter Well Drilling. We drill in the Finger Lakes area, also on the board of the Empire State Well Drillers Association. And kind of like Dave Rossick, I started in Geo probably in '08 when the welder well drilling was kind of drying up a little bit. I went on to IGSPA and was in the same classes like Porky Cutter and Wayne Nash, some of the kind of legends of the drilling industry. But we got back out, did some geothermal drilling in the area, and we also do a lot of water wells too, and yeah, there you go.
My name's Jeff Smith. I'm a fourth-generation groundwater contractor in Kennewick, New York. I'm past president of Empire State Water Well Drillers Association. I'm also a master groundwater contractor with NGWA. Prior to this year, for the past 30 years, I've been co-chairman of the Government Affairs Committee for the Empire State Well Drillers Association, and I was myself and a party of others responsible for the implementation of New York State DEC Law 151525, which is the regulation of well drillers in New York. Pass that over to you, Ryan.
All right. Morning, everyone. Ryan Sarda, engineer at Dandelion Energy. Been with the company basically from zero since the beginning. We were founded in 2017, operate primarily New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts. We focus exclusively on the residential market, and 90+% of our business is retrofit. Since the company was started, we've installed 1,800 heat pumps across 1,400 homes, 8,000 tons worth of GEO, and 1 million feet of vertical borehole drilled. So we've done a bunch of work, expanding every day.
And I'm Scott Smith. I'm on the clean heating and cooling team at NYSERDA. There's a lot of my colleagues here today. I think there are 30 or so NYSERDA people here. So if there are some here, maybe raise your hand in the room, but certainly say hi to some of us later in the day. We have huge climate goals in New York, and we've come to understand that that means electrification. We also have come to understand that that means a lot of ground source heat pumps. We have the governor in the State of the State last year announced a 2 million homes plan, 2 million climate-friendly homes, and we're working to figure out how to do that. 1 million of those homes will be electrified, and if, say, 20% of those were geothermal, right, that'd be 200,000 households. That would require probably 100 million linear feet of borehole by 2030. And so if you think about that and how many boreholes are being drilled in New York State right now, the linear feet, we have a huge need to grow the market, grow the supply of boreholes, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brock Yordy. I was promised free lunch, so I said I'd sit on a panel. I am a journalist with the Driller magazine, and then also work and advocate in the industry, and I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I wanted to start with a simple but loaded question to each one of the panelists. You get one answer, though. So tell me, what is one of the biggest challenges you see in growing your particular industry, your part of the industry, your office, your company, your drilling team? But just pick one, and let's start from there. So Gino, if you want to start. Microphone.
The equipment, the drilling equipment, is going to be a problem in the future.
Okay.
Training employees.
Acquiring competent employees.
One answer, huh?
Just one.
Oh, okay.
We'll start with one.
I think we got to solve the sales problem. So we have a big backlog of work to do, so we're building out our drilling capacity. Not everyone's in the same boat, so.
Not sure I'm qualified to answer this question. I'm the only non-driller, I think, up here. But we hear workforce is the big challenge a lot from our drillers.
Changing the culture and us believing that the new generation coming in can't do what we've been doing. And we lost the millennials to this on the war on terror and on the fact that they went into other great industries. And Gen Z is primed to do this, but we have to get out of our own way.
So employees are a big hurdle for not just the drilling market, but our entire industry, right? It's hard to find, retain, train, get people excited to do their work. So open this up to everyone here. How do you find people? Let's just start with that. Do you go to high schools? Do you go to trade shows? Where do you find your employees?
So the folks at Bureau of Labor Statistics are very lonely, and you can be any shyster journalist and they'll talk to you. With that said, there's like almost 4 million high school seniors graduating, and after COVID, they believe they don't need to do 4-year universities, but we still need the science and fundamentals aspect. Nothing progresses in our society without drilling, and it's pretty purposeful, from clean energy to making water come out of the ground, and it's having that message of you want to come make a change for the environment.
So maybe we'll go down the panel this way this time, Kortney,
Sure,
if that's okay.
absolutely.
So I introduced some of my NYSERDA colleagues raise their hand earlier. I want to have somebody else raise their hand now. Devetta Thatcher from our workforce development team is here. I'm not going to talk about where we source our employees because your employees that we're talking about. But I wanted to highlight that we've got $35 million roughly of electrification or heat pump related workforce development funding, and we need you to come get it to get your people trained, to grow the workforce, to grow the talent pipeline. I'll say a little bit more about that later.
Drilling's pretty specialized discipline, right? It takes lots of experience, years of expertise. You just have to see a bunch of different conditions in order to be good at what you do. So you just can't find that everywhere. So we, recruit from other industries that might be slowing down, but, a bunch of, specially trained folks who want to come over and work in an exciting new field. But also, I just think the best way to find new drill operators, for example, is just homegrown talent, right? Training, build your guys up, give them a career path, show them how to do it the right way.
I would agree with you, Ryan. Taking people from within, teaching, training. Empire State Well Drillers Association has done numerous programs. We did the largest children's water festival in the United States back in 2016, trying to educate young 4th, 5th, and 6th graders about the importance of groundwater, about wells. My company, we go to the schools whenever we're asked to provide information about drilling, just to try to get those young kids out there in the field interested. I might also add, I'm probably one of the only people in this room or in the New York State that's a graduate of an accredited groundwater resources development program, there was 3 of them at one time. One in Virginia, where I graduated, Staples in Minnesota, Sir Sanford Fleming College in Ontario, Canada. I'm not aware if those last two facilities are still operating. I called it an NGWA and they were not sure. But having lost over 2 million people during COVID into retirement has certainly created a workforce shortage of a magnificent magnitude. And that's the biggest struggle we have to go forward.
20 years ago when I first started, I acquired some really smaller drilling companies, and they came with employees. And plus I had a couple more family members that used to work with me, but since then, as time goes on, those employees were already, fairly elderly. Now they're non-existent, and my family is pretty much me and my wife and my daughter. So recently, trying to fill that void has been pretty tough. I've done advertisement in papers, I've done on-the-line stuff, Jobs Indeed. Half of them that do, you used to, 20 years ago, you might get 50, inquiries about it. Now you're getting maybe 5. And then out of that 5, you bring them in to do the interview. Because, in the drilling business, you got to be pretty specialized. You got to be able to conduct yourself and make decisions on the fly, be able to learn quickly, and also obtain a CDL. And you got to be trained to do what we do. And by the time they hear all that, half of them walk out. And then the other 2 that are left, one is qualified, and the other guy doesn't really want to put in the hours. And obviously, we have to put in some hours to do this kind of work, and heavy lifting and get dirty. So I've also had good luck. Some of our best luck was maybe just getting out there and just telling everybody, use Facebook, use signs. I used to put road signs on every corner, I'm needing help. And believe it or not, that was one of my better tools to bring in different people. I'm also going to try maybe bringing a drill rig to a BOCES, a local BOCES, here in the summertime, maybe just to kind of, because a lot of kids don't even know what a drill rig is or what we even do anymore, because it always has been a family-oriented business, and we're losing that. So now trying to find people is going to be harder.
There's 2 different models. I guess the Dandelion model, individual homes, and then there's the multi-rig sites, which you're going to see pretty quick. Back in about 10 years ago, 2008, we were doing some work in Europe where we had some issues with the aquifers. We had 300 holes to put in an IKEA, where the top 2 aquifers were contaminated. The third, deeper one, was potable, and we were forced to use a dual rotary rig. Forced because otherwise we'd be contaminating the only aquifer available. And we had to use cement, 95% cement. In Italy, they like cement. 95% cement and 5% bentonite in order not to make sure that these three aquifers did not contact. While we're doing the work there in Canada, we had some issues where, not issues, but we could only drill so deep with mud drilling, and then 300, 400, 500 feet of overburden, we couldn't drill anymore. So I used to have mayhews. We would go down maybe 200 feet, 250. We don't want to risk any more by putting the pipe in. But once we brought these, even though dual rigs were available in North America, was never used for our particular use, our particular industry. So now we are able to, I mean, this is not new anymore. It's, Stan Ritzma has also been using quite a bit. Now we can guarantee not a hole a week, we can guarantee a hole a day, maybe a hole and a half a day. Instead of 200 feet, you can now go to 700, 800, 900 feet. So technology is going to be important. So the training is important because you have to have at least a few people in your company that has water well experience, because in case you run into gas, in case you run to artesian conditions. But and you have to have some really good mechanics available to fix these machines, because otherwise you don't turn, you don't make any money, you don't produce. However, these machines can be easily with joysticks now, and this new generation, they know joysticks very well. You're able to put in a major supervisor on a 3 or 4 rig site, major supervisor, and have some of these high school graduates come in, and with some training, of course, you have to have some training in there, operate the machines. If the machines are, now the more complicated the machines are, or the more automatic the machines are, the more complicated they are, and you have to have a mechanic on staff. So there's a double-edged sword on some of these things. Just my feeling, anyways.
So I kind of want to piggyback on this a little bit. We'll move into equipment in a minute, but we have a unique audience with NYSERDA here. So if you had a wish list for training, incentives, or a training program, you mentioned CDLs. That is increasingly hard to get for anyone or be motivated to get their CDL. What could NYSERDA or the state association do to help improve training or help employee retention, help motivation? Uniquely, you kind of have the audience here, so what would you need? Yeah, go ahead.
I worked for Nomad Drilling, which was a Chesapeake-owned company. We did the Marcellus shale drilling in the northeastern Pennsylvania. We had 33 gas rigs. When I first started, I was a rig mechanic for them, but we had 33 gas rigs and 20 in the southern part of Pennsylvania. When we first started getting going, they needed to drill a lot of wells in a short period of time, and they didn't have the drillers or the crew, and they came up with a training program, and I was part of putting it together in Sayre, Pennsylvania. We had an empty lot, and we brought in a drill rig. We stripped it down, rebuilt it. We put mud pumps, various types of mud pumps, various types of BOP preventers, all this equipment, and all of a sudden the people started coming. They had trainers that would come in, and they would train all these new drillers on how to drill in the Marcellus and the Pennsylvania region, and how to, if there was an issue with a gas well that was having an issue, a kick out or whatever, they could actually go through that scenario on there, so the people would have some kind of training before they went on to the real rig and did the real deal. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to join the Empire State Well Drillers Association too, is because I see our industry is getting fewer and fewer, and we need to somehow get some kind of training to help, because it's hard. If you're a small business and you got to drill 200 water wells a year and then do the geothermal and everything else, how are you going to have time to do in-house training and then try to train them to do, your CDL and everything else? If there was an outside training source, maybe a local one, let's say put in Syracuse or something, and have maybe a manufacturer, bring in some rigs or something that we can use, and some equipment that we can use, and maybe adapt to the water well and the geothermal, maybe kill 2 birds with 1 stone. and to further future, educate the future kids that are coming in. And maybe, you know, maybe New York State can kind of also bring some awareness to the drilling industry in this state, because if they're going to need all this drilling done, they're going to have to start putting us in a better light, kind of like educating. You go to and most of the people, and they don't even know what a drill rig is, you know. So that would definitely help. Get more of awareness out, get more people to maybe understand what we're trying to do, and maybe the younger generation might get on board with it, and have some kind of a training program for people for water well and geo, and maybe combine the both with different various of, because we also in New York State is all different geology, and my area is different than I can go to Elmira and drill, and go to Rochester and drill, and be totally different, you know, areas, gases. That's another thing too, is if we can have some kind of like a, you know, educate us on the geology of the state too, on the same program with natural gas, because we have, you know, issues with that. We don't want to be burning up rigs and stuff like that. So the more information we have, the better we be prepared for the amount of work that's coming down our way, I guess.
It sounds like maybe using a field day. So on the projects that are funded and financed or have grants through NYSERDA, maybe that part of that is a field day where you get to invite potential employees out and they get to take a look. And we educate that community, maybe through the high schools or trade schools, vocational schools, that they can come out and take a look. And we kind of demystify that what we're doing isn't that not cool, right? Like, it's a lot of fun once you actually get into it. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so with the Empire State Well Drillers Association, when I got involved with it 40-some years ago, that's what I said. I don't want to go to an old man supper club. I got better things to do. And so we implemented the first round of training. We actually had field demonstrations that we started in the late 80s. And when New York State DEC decided there was going to be a registration certification program in New York, we were the only state of 50 that had a comprehensive training program to assist people in passing NGWA certification exams, which are a requirement to be a water well driller. Having said that, if we had a regional-based certificate-type program, because to be a well driller, you're a multifaceted employee. Truck driver, welder, plumber, electrician, drill rig operator, supervisors as far as safety goes on the rig. And you could take it like a 6-month program, and if NYSERDA had the money to people that were sponsored to offset the cost for these people to go to school. Again, yes, as Gino said, we've got two facets. We've got these big commercial jobs where we're not moving equipment, and then we have a lot of this low-hanging fruit on small individual sites. These boys have to have CDLs. And so if we can encompass the CDL training, which I believe is about 80 hours of classroom, 110 if they want a manual transmission, fast track these items, which are what we're looking for in employees when they come looking for a job.
A suggestion, Manisha Rane Fondacaro, Solnet Solutions. How about subcontracting out to fossil fuel companies who typically drill, like for natural gas and everything, to train people for your business? Like, it could be done at the state level or even at company level. Thank you.
But that's not going on.
Yeah, I mean,
it's two different worlds.
Yeah, so, I mean, training is ultimately, it's very important, right? Relevant training is probably the key, you know, because vertical borehole drilling is different than water well and different than other disciplines, right? I agree with all the things we're saying about training. I would say, in addition to that, let's look for barriers to entry and get rid of them, right? So, permitting, shorten timelines, streamline the process, standardize it a little bit, train inspectors so they know what they're looking at, right, who are unfamiliar. Get rid of unnecessary regulation where we can. 500-foot rule in New York, anyone? Right? Kevin, I know you got a panel on that later, so I don't steal your thunder. You know, and then
table that discussion.
Yeah,
Brian.
table it. Sorry about that. To be continued. Licensing. Make it easier to get licensing. Look at the state of Connecticut recently rolled out new licensing categories. Heather, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to put you on the spot. But you can actually apply for and sit for a license for vertical borehole drilling, closed loop. And that's the only thing you have to worry about. So you don't have to have experience and test on other areas that you don't know anything about, right? So get rid of barriers to entry. That's what I would say.
I do, but I can.
No, go ahead.
So thank you, Kortney, for teeing that up. That's the answers were for our benefit, or the question was for our benefit. But it's a good time for me to mention a few things. So one is, I mentioned before, and I introduced Devetta from our workforce development team. We have funding. What we need from this group, Empire State Well Drillers Association, NY-GEO, and others, ICHPA, is for you to come ask for the money. Right, so we've got the money available, but the geothermal drilling industry has got to come together with some proposals and some plans to do this training. We do have money to develop the training program and the curriculum, and to offset the costs for the people that present. And I don't know, Brock, you want the mic, but
No,
just
I wanted the money.
you want the money? Oh yeah, you can have the money. Sure. Yeah, we'll just submit a proposal, right? So the other program that we have that I just want to mention briefly, and I can talk about it a little bit more if there's time. We have an on-the-job training program for clean energy businesses. Geothermal drillers are eligible for that, right? And what we'll do is we'll pay for 75% of the cost of your new employees for either 4 or 6 months, depending on whether they're a normal employee or in a priority population, like previously incarcerated, veteran, that type of thing. So. Not a lot of awareness about that amongst this group, amongst this industry, and we want you to come avail yourselves of that. So talk to me, Devetta, Andrew Piper on our team later, and we can tell you how to get involved in that program. The third thing I wanted to quickly mention is we understand that this drilling capacity issue is not a New York specific thing, but we are focused on New York, and we are going to be what I want to do is pull together a group of you, and we've sent at least an email or two to some of you already, to talk about this issue, how we can tackle it in New York. We can export the ideas to other places later, but let's figure out how to solve it for New York. I hope this group, which I'm sort of thinking about as a task force, will be a place where people can come together and partner up to come ask for the money that I talked about. And we want to talk about all the solutions: workforce, training, bringing people in from out of state, growing the businesses that we have in New York. My cards are up here on the table, so if you would like to be part of that group, we're probably going to talk once every other month maybe for the foreseeable future. Please come grab a card and email me and let me know that you want to be part of it.
So I actually have a quick question for you, though. So I know that we get asked a lot or told a lot that there are grants out there and there's funding opportunities, but I know as a contractor, it's overwhelming and intimidating. Are there programs from NYSERDA that'll help us get through the grant writing process?
Well, so the on-the-job training program thing I'll single out as being fairly straightforward and easy. And the team that is involved runs that program for us, and the Department of Labor in New York State helps companies out a lot to get involved in that program. The competitive proposals, I completely see your point, Kortney. I don't know that we don't have something that will help you write the proposal, but the proposal should be submitted by teams, and hopefully one of your team members will be better at writing the grant proposal, and we're here to help try to match you up with those other proposers. Educators, community colleges, trade schools will often be a lead proposer on a project like that.
Great. So let's move on to equipment. So we've had this conversation at these conferences before. There's not a lot of drill rigs made in the U.S. right now, and the technology on those drill rigs are slow, right? To see even any electronics on a drill rig is pretty surprising. So let's talk about equipment, how we get it, how we maintain it. So I know this is a big challenge, but let's start with, how do you get it? Yeah, go ahead. Microphone.
So in my 42 years, I've watched the demise of 66% of the drill rig manufacturers in the United States. We're down to approximately 5 manufacturers. If you want to order a drill rig today, you're going to put $250,000 down, and the price is around $1.2 million, and you'll get it in November of 24 at a price to be determined, and your deposit is non-refundable. We just lost a major player in the well drilling manufacturing industry when Schramm Incorporated from Westchester, Pennsylvania closed the doors after 100 years. And Schramm had some very innovative technology using electronic control rigs. They experimented with that, found that it was not conducive to the environment in which these drill rigs are working. Having said that, we got 5 manufacturers, and so it's tough to get drill rigs. Part of the problem I heard earlier, Tier 3, Tier 4 final emissions, This is what's really put a dent into the drill rig manufacturing. A lot of these drill rigs were deck mounted. You had a truck that powered the truck to the job site, a deck mounted drill engine which powered the components. With the EPA requirements, everybody's had to steer away from these deck mounted engine machines. And we're driving everything 600 horsepower through transfer cases, and these transfer cases aren't holding up well. I think the Midwest, GEFCO, probably has the most experience in these transfer cases, but this is a problem. And so, yeah, I've looked into the Italian, the Frosty rigs, some of the rigs from overseas, but by the time you pay the duty to import them and get them here, and then what happens when it breaks? Because that's a long service call from Italy.
I think a big piece of this is adoption to technology, innovation, and we can see that with rig manufacturers. We see the Defense Production Act being used for all sorts of things, geothermal right now and green energy, not to mention other funds for subsidies and innovation. And there's 23 million private water wells. So all the water well drillers out there, there's 23 million in America. There's only about 7% of our country on private water wells, and only about 26% period on groundwater. So like this idea of drill rigs, Peterbilt and the trucks, they build all the trucks the first week of the year, and those are the trucks that are going to be used for water well rigs and whatnot. And so then we start looking at Tier 4 final and those things that have come along. They didn't sneak up on us, no different than what we're trying to do with our goals for 2030 here in New York. And so there is a barrier, but the barrier is a blend between adopting the right technology and continuing the way we've done things. And I think that's a big piece to that. And as I work on behavioral psychology of safety right now, why? Because I'm nuts. And you look at repetitive stress and ergonomics and everything that has been what we say this is a young man's game, but you know, hands-free rod handling technology, clamping breakout systems, the things that we see the Australians and Canadians using for mining, or what we see in the oil and gas, we have to mitigate risk on top of everything else we're doing, which is going to ease the use and make it so a new generation can run these rigs. And that's, 2013 was the first fully automated oil and gas rig by Neighbors. You know, and I sat down there in Houston with the IADC, and we had this big discussion, and NASA was there, and NASA was involved. It was this big deal. And the biggest thing that NASA kept saying is, hey, we still have somebody that's at the controls when the shuttle is landing. And the human brain will always be part of that. It's just, how do we utilize it in a better way that mitigates the risk and makes it easier for drilling?
If we have a question, go ahead.
So we brought in some European machines. You're right, the servicing could be an issue if you don't know the language. I do know the language, so I'm okay. However, you can probably work a deal with some of the Europeans or some of the allies that have these good machines and have licensing in North America. So this way here, you don't have to have this language barrier. We've had some drillers, some young kids that within a month, they were able to operate some of these machines. But, you know, obviously there's a second or third or fourth machine on site, but they were able to, again, because it's so totally automatic, they could do that. So the training part of it is very important, at least, but there has to be some, you know, out of the box situation where if we're gonna do this, the title of this is to multiply 5 times the number of capacity every year for the next 10 years, so 50 times the next 10 years. There has to be an approach similar to a war-like situation where instead of producing 1 airplane a day, you have to produce 5 airplanes a day. And it's unfortunate. I owned the SRAM until 3 years ago. It's unfortunate that the SRAM closed down, because otherwise there maybe somebody can open it up again. But the training, if it's the machines are automatic, and there's more and more automatic machines coming out of Europe, these machines are automatic. The training will not take a long time for on just geothermal. They do have to know where the water is, what kind of soil you're going to encounter, at different depths. But the training, is there. And yeah, there are some universities, Sanford Fleming in Canada, they're also producing quite a few.
So I know we have a question, but let's talk about automation, right? How many of us have a new car that is so hard to find a mechanic to work on because it's basically a computer, right? Like, it's super difficult. It's hard to find any mechanic anywhere that can do that. So when we talk about automating drill rigs, it isn't just getting someone to run it. How do we get someone to fix it? So with the rigs that you've got now, or the rigs that we've seen come across from overseas, I know that there's even problems finding parts. I mean, there are big rig manufacturers who are 6 months to get you a part that you need and your rig's unfunctional. So how do we grow capacity when we can't keep rigs necessarily running or even get parts commonly available? So between having a mechanic that can fix it and actually having the part to fix it, what are some things that we could do as an industry to help overcome that?
That was one of the bigger issues like Nomac had when they retrofitted some of their older triples. They tried to automate their rod handling systems, and it was a huge growing pain. There was some issues, and they went 2 or 3 years, but they kept at it and they kept improving at it. That's just my experience, because I had a little more experience on the automation side of drilling, was more on the oil and gas side of things. At Waterwell, there really was never much of an automation. I mean, I think T3, the Ingersollerans were pretty user-friendly. I've owned Rich Drills, CPs, Jeffco's, and to be honest with you, a lot of my guys didn't like, they worked fine, but they didn't really care for them as much as they liked the T3s or them kind of style rigs. But they're not automated. They're still kind of bulky and heavy, and if you're going to be using that thing like production drilling, like you got to run that thing all wide open all day, 12 hours a day, that's going to wear on a person for sure. Your best guy, your biggest guy, you're going to wear him out within a year if you're going to be doing that. So you do have to, those old CPs, like the wrenches were heavy. You had to manually pull your J wrenches and all this stuff. And I had bought a rig last year. It was something new. It was a lot smaller. It was a dual rotary, because we live in an area that's a lot of different geology, and I was able to come across a guy up in Canada that made a drill rig, and I just talked to the guy on the phone. I was busy, and I pulled the plug. I says, I want one. We brought it. Within 3 or 4 months, he had it at my shop, and we did some demoing drilling with it, and my guys looked at that and they just fell in love with the machine. And when he left, I had them guys run the machine, and these guys, they've been with me for a little bit, but they got on that machine and they actually ran that rig better than I could, because I'm kind of the old school, on the bigger rigs and stuff, and they actually picked that rig up pretty reasonably quick and safe. It was really safe, and the parts on it were really easy to most of the parts of that thing could be built and made, and you can buy it at a Tractor Supply. It's really simple. So and that was a success for me, and I use it for geothermal. It's good for, got 10-foot rods, it's very light, and you can put whatever compressor you want onto it, or mud. I've drilled mud with it, and it's been a great little machine. So I think rigs kind of in that direction are the way to go. But there isn't that many, like you were saying, there's not that many manufacturers that are willing to take that on.
But what we got to look at is the magnitude of the whole forecast of what we're being asked to do as a drilling industry. Right now, I've got about 300 drillers registered in New York State through DEC reporting well data. The past 10 years, let's back up one step. New York State's a major player in the water well industry. You wouldn't think of that. But we used to be 4th in the number of wells, private wells. There was over 1 million wells in New York State. When we first implemented this DEC registration reporting program, there was about 12,000 wells drilled per year. After 2008 and the housing crisis, those numbers dropped to around 5,000 to 6,000 a year, where we're at about 4,900. Assuming a 250-foot average borehole, because I don't have the numbers from DEC, that puts those drillers in last year drilling 1.2 million feet of hole. To put 200,000 boreholes in at 500 foot is 100 million feet of drilling. we've got to, and if we want to do that in 10 years, we've got to increase our capacity tenfold per year. Now, if we do some other math, and you boys with these bigger companies that have rigs running 5 days a week, getting your production, if we can get 500 foot a day out of a drill rig, that drill rig is not going to work much more than 180 days a year. There's maintenance, there's breakdowns, there's vacations, holidays, etc. We compute that out, and I'd come out with somewheres, and I wrote it down. You could probably get 90,000 feet per year out of a rig under ideal conditions. And so when we look forward to tapping into that 10 million foot of drilling, that's a lot of rigs. And you'd need about 10,000 rigs to hit that benchmark of 100 million feet. Largest drilling company I know of was oil and gas drilling company. A lot of you guys probably know them, Dallas Morris. They were the 10th leading largest drilling contractor in the world as far as footage. And on 10 rigs, they only ran 1.5 million feet in their best year. And that's a company that's going 24/7. So this is a big, big load to try to get up and moving and getting everywhere from rig manufacturers, whether we have the government push to get building rigs, to training people. This is not something that's going to jump start within 6 months or a year, at least in my opinion.
Just one quick thing. I mean, it sounds daunting, doesn't it? It's a big undertaking. This is why I say we need to fix the sales problem first, right? Thinking about the cost, the lead time, the people, all this kind of stuff. Kortney, are you going to spend $1 million on a new rig unless you've got guaranteed work behind it?
Nope.
Probably not, right? So think about the things we can do from that perspective to get the demand there so the supply will come after, right? So expand the reach of rebate programs, right? New York sets the bar. It's actually world class. But look at surrounding states who are starting to follow suit. Maybe they don't offer incentive amounts that are as high. Maybe they don't offer anything for new construction but only retrofit. Maybe not commercial, right? Majority of the states in the country don't offer anything looking beyond the borders of New York. So I think that's one important thing is just lower the price point for the systems. You can do that through rebates. Also, do what we can to offer low-cost financing, make that readily available, unlock third-party ownership, lease financing. Some of those things will help customers say yes, and then more people are going to come and rise to the challenge once they've got the business there.
So I know we had a question in here, and I apologize for jumping over, but go at it.
Got one question, one comment. The question is, there's all the talk about labor shortage and all that. We got Scott Smith from NYSERDA, and they're willing to do these programs. The next big hot topic is the equipment shortage. Any reach out or anything like that? I don't think there's any equipment manufacturers other than heat pump equipment, drill rig equipment. We're talking about all this, but any manufacturers here to listen?
Yeah, there's a couple in the
room. I know,
room.
like, yeah, that's true. I did see Derek's, but we're growing. Yeah, okay. So that was just, outreach to those guys with all this stuff. The other comment was, I think there's a line in between the residential and the commercial side of the geo stuff. If you're setting up a project where you're going to go do 40, 100 holes or whatever, you can kind of adapt, learn, send your lead guy out there, drill the four corners of the project and say, okay, this is that. Drill it this way, because we've done it. Go out, do this, do that trick. You'll get the casing in, you'll get the hole down. Okay, he goes out there for 6 months. And you can also adapt your equipment. Okay, I can get away with a little smaller machine or what have you. Casing doesn't go in too bad. On the residential side, we're in, town of Hudson, city of Hudson today, easy drilling, 2 holes. Oh, we got to go to Corinth tomorrow. That's a totally different ball game up there. That's nightmare drilling. Or you got to go to the Alps, we call them over here, the Berkshires. You want a lesson? Go drill in the Berkshires. The residential side is gonna take more adaptable equipment and more specialized people because you're moving over and over and over again. It's not the same thing twice. And when you talk about neighbors setting up and doing a fully automated machine, that's on a machine that's there for a month and the ground conditions are known. A commercial project, you've got geologists, test holes, reports. We're going to Johnny Smith's house and we don't know what's there. You know, there's a reason us water well drillers have massive, big, heavy, reliable iron. It's because we need it. We drill holes every day of the week. You know, the electronic stuff, what we're being offered, doesn't work out, you know, not very well. It's getting there, but if you're going to do, you know, compare it to like a cat dozer with an enclosed cab and weatherproof and all that stuff, you know, we're two different machines. So just something I was bringing up, that's all.
I think there's that barrier there is very important. And why bring up oil field or mining or whatnot is there's 166 million Americans that work in our country every day. Only 7.6 million of those work in construction. And of that, 500,000 is oil and gas, or 500,000 is mining, and 280,000 is oil and gas. We make up about 1 to 0.5% of the entire construction workforce in drilling, for specialized drilling. So going to the manufacturers is very important. But, you know, I don't see anybody with a rotary one of these right now. So, I mean, us adopting technology is key to us being able to overcome this barrier.
Great. We had a question over here. Let's start in the back. Stan.
Yeah, thanks. I just have a question. You know, we look at the transition that we're talking about here is on the scale of the conversion from, say, oil to natural gas. At what point do we start looking at whole communities? I mean, we talk about a drill rig drilling one house and then moving 10, 20, 30 miles away to go drill another one and do that. At what point are we talking about doing whole communities and really talk about that? Like, what is that going to take? Because I actually don't think we're going to get there with one-offs ever. So, that, I mean, that's the issue, right? We need to mobilize equipment and people at a scale that's, you know, of the same as what you would have seen when you saw the gas pipelines go in. So, you know, and I don't know who to talk to, but I mean, there's utility companies. Utilities are here. Community people are here. That's what I think the geo industry needs in order to get to that kind of scale. Is that planning and push, not necessarily that you force people to get on it, because I'm not suggesting that that's going to work, but that it's so attractive to do that you say, why wouldn't I do that, right? I want on that system. So I'm kind of wondering if there's some insight into that.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. The first thing I'm going to do is plug the heat track tomorrow. So tomorrow, all day, there's going to be a track about district geothermal. I'll also mention that, you know, we have a community heat pump system program that NYSERDA is running. I don't think I see Sue Doherty in the room, but she runs that program. We're spending about $40 million to try to do the first few examples of those types of projects in New York. I think I did see a colleague from Troy here. That's one of the projects that we're working on. And then there's a utility thermal energy networks and Jobs Act that was passed here in New York last year, and the utilities are going to be doing, each of the utilities are going to be doing one or more pilot projects in the next few years. So it's going to take some work to get there, but we're on that path. And, you know, I'll just say, you know, personally and professionally as an NYSERDA staff member, I think that those types of community heat pump systems or clean thermal energy networks are a huge part of what will end up being the geothermal market in New York in the next 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, go ahead. Gino needs the microphone.
Back in the early 80s, when there was conversions from oil to gas, the gas company used to ask HVAC dealers to basically have sign up 5 or 6 or 7 homes along the street, and for even as minimal as a hot water tank and gas. It didn't have to be an oil furnace. And once they had set up those few homes, they basically bring the pipeline in for free. So the whole idea is that if there was a sequence of a number of homes, because mobilization is costly and demobilization is costly, but there's a series of homes and also some compact drilling rigs that you know can make less mess and you know whatever. And there's also this is in Canada, it's in Toronto. It used to be Consumers Gas. And the rumors was that if you have your gas conversion from oil to gas, you'll have the best lawn possible when they're finished with you. So if you have a bad lawn, you know, just make sure you sign on the gas.
So that actually brings up a good conversation point, though, is that we keep hearing that there's not enough capacity in the industry. But I know that me at Midwest, I see Allied Well Drilling in the back. There are plenty of us drillers here in the audience that would be happy to bid your work. But we don't always hear about it. So is there an opportunity, whether it's through NYSERDA or NY-GEO, to almost do a matchmaking service to publish jobs that are out there or publish the work that needs to be done so that the drillers can find it? And whether it's inclusive of scope or size of project, so maybe it is for a specialty drilling technique. Is there appetite within the state to do that? I see Steve Scott's shaking his head, but.
So there's definitely appetite. I think we have to figure out exactly how we do it. I mean, part of the issue is I don't think we know the projects that we're funding, and so we can show that pipeline. We know something about the utility thermal energy networks, that pilots that are part of, or in response to that act that I mentioned, but we don't have as much visibility into the full pipeline as we wish we did, and I think we're trying to figure out how to do that. But I think that's a good point, Kortney.
Sure. Question, yes.
So I know this isn't going to be helpful, so I apologize in advance, but everything comes back to money, right? So we're being asked, and let me preface this with, we as a company want to be a game player, and yet we have one drill rig, we make enough to keep ourselves going and be able to afford slightly better equipment, but a comment before was, we're being asked to front millions of dollars for more rigs, right? But then we get underbid for every single job. I'm being asked to make estimates for what we charge in 2012. How are we supposed to be viable and continue to be competitive with wages, to get more drillers who want to drill for us out of whatever programs are going to be made, if we can't compete and make the profit that we need to make to be able to pay our bills and to be able to be competitive? I hate to throw Allied under the bus, sorry Allied, but we are not Walmart. We can't afford to get, pay, again, make what we do for 2012. That's silly. And that's my soapbox.
It's okay. You can call us out, every one of us. But I will say that's to Ryan's point, right? We need market, right? If we're all beating each other up over the same work, that's tough. So more market penetration, more successful installations, to have a matchmaking service so we know about more work. We keep hearing that it's going to explode, but we need the explosion to happen, right? Actual contracts. The bank doesn't take payment on, it's coming, I promise. The market is going to grow, I promise. So I get it. I get your frustration. We might as well allow in the very back Allied to. Hi.
Hey guys. I just don't think I understand. So everything we talk about is that the demand is so high, there's not enough supply to fill it. Anyone who ever took Econ 101 knows that when demand exceeds supply, prices go up. So I don't understand. I'm a little confused on the price being so low that we can't afford to pay our employees. So if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk about it. So you got an industry, the water well industry, they're saturated. Everybody has a lot of work, and so we charge what we charge. When we're asked to bid on some of the geo work and then dictated, hey, you got to be in this price range, and I'm not in your field, so I don't know what your prices are, but we are comfortable doing what we do best, drilling water wells, and we can make a reasonable return on our investment there. Some of these big jobs, they come through our office like, we don't want to do them, it's too big, it's overwhelming. We can't leave our residential customers in the water well business for 2 or 3 months to complete them, so we don't bid those jobs. We don't want to do those jobs. But it has been a race to the bottom. Many of the installers that put heat pumps in, we've done a fair amount of geo, but, oh, you got to bring your costs down. And like this woman over there said, we can't drill for 2012 prices. Today, the cost of drilling and well casing, fuel, labor, et cetera, you're looking at $50 a case foot. So I don't know what loops and grout are this year, but yeah, I think that's one of the apprehensions with the water well industry is like, hey, I'm comfortable in this zone, I can make a reasonable return, and to get into this other market is some ground that's untested to us.
So we're not going to solve the price issue here, so
Yeah,
let's move on from that. But yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
I just add, like, geo drilling is about production, right? Volume, right? The more feet you can do, the more jobs you can do, the lower the cost is going to be, right? So it just goes back to the sales problem, having work, right? Buy $1 million rig and you spread it out over one job or 100 jobs in the year. It's going to be cheaper.
Even if you had Rob Foyer, Geothermal Works, we've been at it for 20 years in the DX geothermal drilling sector. Even if you had X number of jobs times 10, you're not going to lower your price per foot. Starting at $8 a foot 20 years ago or $7 a foot and working all the way up to 15, 18, 20, non-cased. I appreciate the casing comment. 5 years ago, we were all at this conference. There was less than 100 people here. And Con Ed stood in front of us and said, look, our target for next year is 5,400 systems installed residentially. When the next year came and gone, I think they hit 126 out of that targeted 5,400. I mean, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Everybody's here for the right reasons, because hopefully we care about the planet. It isn't all the bottom line, but it is. Someone made a comment a few minutes ago about repair. If you don't have access to a hydraulics mechanic, or if your driller isn't a hydraulics mechanic like ours is, your downtime is painful. Your risk is so high, you can't lower the price ever. Because if you hit one project where it's all boulders, and you're breaking steel, which no one talks about, and you're losing casing, and that job is quote-unquote a disaster, how many more jobs are you doing in the next quarter to make up for the loss you had on that job? And that's not $1,000, guys. It's not $20,000. You could lose $40, $80, $100,000 on a job. So everybody thinks that all the well guys and all the drilling guys are getting rich. Let me tell you, to stay in this industry for more than a year, you're a hero, because it's painful.
Well, so that's a topic that I'd like to piggyback on. So talking about the mechanics. So I know NYSERDA mentioned that they have a program to help with employees, right? Does that program extend to us hiring mechanics to work on these drill rigs? Because they are fairly specialized.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think maybe. I think it depends on who they're working for and exactly what they're doing. But I think we would hope to try to help them meet that need. I think whether we do it through our on-the-job training program or maybe some other thing that we can do. One thing maybe I didn't say, or I tried to, maybe Kortney said it a little bit earlier, but we're looking for ideas on the next phase of investments that NYSERDA can make to try to help with this issue. If you're a manufacturer in the room, we want to talk to you. I think there's some things we can do to work with you. So we don't have all the solutions yet, but we're hoping to have more.
Yeah, one last question. So Kevin,
we're down to a couple minutes here.
Yeah,
Rachel, if we have time, we'll go to Rich.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rachel Carpatello with Sustainable Westchester, and we are one of those sales-facing organizations. We're a nonprofit, and we are experiencing the overwhelming demand from the clients who we serve as building owners representatives for. And my question is, how many large building projects do you need to see in, say, a county to make that investment for a new drill rig?
Well, I guess I can take a stab at this one. So, as you mentioned, the average drill rig, 90,000 feet in a year. So, take 90,000 feet and turn it into a building, right? Turn it into multiple buildings. So now we've bought a drill rig, but we can't just do that for 1 year, right? We've all seen where we got really excited, bought drill rigs, and then stared at each other after the market fell off. So it isn't just what can we do this year, it's how do we sustain that momentum going forward. We're happy to make the investment. We want to buy drill rigs. There are drill rig manufacturers here in this room that are itching for us to finally give them that purchase order, but we need executable contracts. So at minimum, think of it that way. Think of the fact that we need to keep that drill rig running. But we do run into a lot of these challenges, which is why I'm asking about repair. It's why I'm asking. I mean, some colleagues literally have drill rigs that sit idle because I cannot get parts for them. So how do we solve those problems? How do we solve, it isn't hydraulics, right? Those are, you can find a hydraulics mechanic. Maybe they don't necessarily understand all the pressures that need to be set in a drill rig, but we can find those. But it's the specialty pieces. It's the things that are proprietary to a drill rig manufacturer that nobody stocks that just put a wrench in anything that we plan on. But But as far as investing into an area, that's the way I would start to think, is how much footage can we actually complete, can we sell, can be available to these contractors? And it doesn't have to be commercially, it could be residentially too, right? We talk about a matchmaking and having drillers available. It's tough when you call someone who's in Albany and they need to go to Syracuse for a 2-ton house. It's not cost competitive, it's tough, and then, oh, the cost of drilling is too expensive. I'm like, well, do you know how much it costs us to drive that many hours to do 2 holes, maybe 1? So there's a lot to come in, but that's where I would say, if you're gonna talk about making an investment, that's really where you need to start. We had one question way over here.
We have one more question. Lunch follows this. As always, the drilling section of things always gets into some live conversation. We like this. Last question, and then lunch is at noon, and it goes until, I believe, 1:30. Again, I encourage, if you want to stick around and pick brains and ask questions, please. That's what we're here to do. Last one.
Well, it's not so much a question as you take all this in, it is a complete cultural change that we face. In the 1980s, we were all told our kids had to have a Regents degree. And the trades got thrown right under the bus and have been this downward trend for 40 years. And it's not stopped. I'd make Mike Rowe the head of labor department nationwide. We don't have enough clout or influence to even come close to getting to where we need to be. You know, Ryan, I would actually say one idea would be to actually advertise to the public and to communities and to colleges and to billboard. Hey, how would you like to be a driller? And just let people know that there's an industry out there that no one's even thought about, no one even knows about. And it sits in front of us, but we can't get there unless we change culturally what we're thinking about. We need training centers. That takes a lot of money. You need a national commitment. You get a CDL now. Just a few years ago, you get a CDL. You get a little training, you read the book, you go and take the test. You do your right driving test and you get done. Now you spend $5,000 and you pay a kid, 30 hours a week just to go to class that you're paying $5,000 for. How many of them are you going to get? You're not. They take that right out of BOCES now. You used to be able to get a CDL in BOCES. Can you do that anymore? Very few, if any. You can't. It comes down to all these trades, welders, hydraulics, everything that goes, diesel mechanics. And then you look at the equipment that we're all talking about, and a lot of times we complain about. For years, we just laugh because the paint job might last, a week. Literally, and the paint starts falling off on our manufacturers, some great manufacturers, rigs we have. We spend 3 months fixing leaks or rotation problems or things like that, and I can go out and buy $1 million combine from John Deere, and out of the box it works. You can't do that with the drilling rig. And that's time, and that's money, and that's everything that goes into it. It is a complete cultural mindset change, and I think if you're going to do this nationwide and everybody wants these goals and want to be green and want to do all these things, someone has to start at the top because this is a complete different mindset. I hope we get there, but it's going to take a lot of time, effort, and money.
Well, I want to thank everybody for attending today. There's a ton of information, some great resources in this room. So if you have questions about how to grow the industry, please feel free to reach out to any of our panelists, anyone in the room. And if you have a solution, bring it to NY-GEO, bring it to NYSERDA, bring it to IGSPA. We're all happy to listen. So if we could give a round of applause for our panelists.